cobalt and nickel ions by ascending paper chromatography and determination of their RF or retention factor values. Aim: to separate cobalt and nickel ions present in the given mixture by using ascending paper chromatography and determine their RF values or retention factor values. Theory: when a mixture of cations, that is a mixture of cobalt and nickel ions, is spotted on a chromatography paper and the solvent is allowed to flow over it, the cations dissolved in the solvent travel to different distances on the paper according to their RF values. Each cation has a definite RF value for a given solvent. Requirements: the apparatus required are a chromatography paper, a capillary tube, glass jar with a lid, a beaker, a measuring cylinder, and a pencil. The chemicals required are a solution containing mixture of cobalt and nickel ions, acetone, concentrated hydrochloric acid, and distilled water, concentrated aqueous ammonia solution, and acid spray. The procedure is as follows. In a beaker, prepare the eluent by mixing 90 parts by volume of acetone, 5 parts concentrated hydrochloric acid, and 5 parts distilled water. Take about 10 ml of the eluent in a clean glass jar. Cover it with a lid. Leave the jar undisturbed for about 30 minutes for saturation of the glass jar. Cut a paper strip of chromatography paper according to the size of the glass jar, that is at least about 14 cm. Draw a line parallel to one edge of the paper strip and about 2 cm above the edge. This is the base line. Draw another line at a distance of 10 cm from the base line. Using a capillary tube, put a drop of the given mixture of cobalt and nickel ions at the center of the base line. Allow the spot to dry. Successively put 2 to 3 drops at the same spot. Allow the spots to dry. Suspend the chromatography paper strip in the jar containing the solvent such that the lower edge of the paper dips in the solvent, but the base line is above the solvent level. Cover the jar with a lid. The solvent in the jar starts rising. When the solvent rises up to the second line, remove the chromatography paper from the jar. Dry the paper and place it in a beaker containing concentrated aqueous ammonia for 2 minutes. Now remove the paper from the beaker and spray it with rubianic acid. Dry the paper. We can see 2 spots on the paper, a blue-purple spot and a yellow-orange spot. Mark the spots developed. The blue or purple spot is of nickel ions and the yellow-orange spot is of cobalt ions. Measure the distance of the spots from the base line and record your observations. Calculate RF value for each spot using the formula. Retention factor RF is the distance travelled by the spot divided by the distance travelled by the solvent front. Precautions: allow the spot to dry properly before putting the chromatography paper in the jar. The chromatography paper strip should remain erect when suspended in the jar. Do not disturb the jar during the experiment. Observation and result table. The distance travelled by the yellow-orange spot is 5.3 cm and the distance travelled by the blue-purple spot is 4.9 cm. the distance traveled by the solvent front is 10 centimeter. The RF value for the yellow-orange spot is 0.53 and that of the blue-purple spot is 0.49. Result: the RF value for the yellow-orange spot is 0.53 and that of the blue-purple spot is 0.49.